Why did these Christian missionaries come to India? Why did they leave their lives and their families behind? Why did they sail through thousands of miles and weather life-threatening storms? Why did they come? Why did they undertake this difficult voyage? This day, 45 Indian institutes are ranked in the QS Global Ranking for higher studies, placing India as the 7th most represented country in the entire world. Today, we take pride in our prestigious educational institutions. But do we know who pioneered formal education in India?
See, without a script, how will you read? How will you write? Have you ever thought of that? We were only oral communication. 1,652 languages we have. And we have modern script even today, only 200 languages. So from my research, I found out that it was all Bible translators who created modern script for all these languages. These Bible missionaries gave us 85 dictionaries, 116 grammar books, 45 newspapers.
Missionaries became one of the earliest people who impacted our intellectual life through founding of newspapers, journals, periodicals, as well as introducing new forms of literature. So when missionaries began working, let's say here in Punjab, when they started bringing the gospel to people, they worked to develop the language of the people, which was Punjabi. Interestingly, in this region, because it was under the Muslim rule for a very long time, Persian was the language of the literate class, of the educated class. Punjabi was the language of the people, language of the masses, but it wasn't yet developed to the extent that it could be used in courts, it could be used in administration. And this is where missionaries played an important role. They became alternate patrons of the language. They were the ones who started printing in Punjabi language. In fact, the Punjabi Bible was the first printed work in Punjabi prose. They were printing, of course, in Urdu and Persian as well. But the fact that they were printing in Punjabi meant that they were trying to reach out to those sections of the society which were not considered educated. So the real social change, the grassroots change, is what the missionaries were able to accomplish. So much so that now the contemporary Punjabi scholars, they do acknowledge the pioneering work that missionaries have done to bring respectability to Punjabi language, Punjabi literature, and to Punjabi culture. The languages which were spoken by the people but neglected by the administration found their alternate patrons in the missionaries.
But there's a reason for that. They said, why mother tongue should be developed? Bible should be read in the mother tongues because it's a heart language. For example, I'm in Bombay, Marathi. There's no modern script in that. No dictionary, no grammar book, no prose, modern. Some old archaic was there. So the first grammar book in Marathi was given by William Carey in 1805. The first dictionary was given by William Carey in 1810. William Carey, the missionary who came from England in 1793, he was the first professor of Marathi, of Bengali and Sanskrit at Fort Division College, which was established in 1800. It was Pandita Ramabai who introduced kindergarten in 1890s in India. The first university in Asia was established by the Sarambur missionaries, William Ward, William Carey and Joshua Marshman in 1818 in Sarambur. So from kindergarten to the university, it's a contribution of Bible missionaries.
After all the blossoming of many private colleges, still today 50% of the most sought after colleges in India particularly higher education colleges, are Christian colleges.
Jyotirao Phule started a school for the untouchable girls. Nobody in the history of India has ever done anything like that, teaching untouchables and that to girls. But where did Mahatma Jyotirao Phule get this idea from? He got it from an American missionary, Miss Cynthia Farrar. Cynthia Farrar had already been teaching the untouchable girls in Ahmednagar. And looking at her, Jyotirao Phule said that if a foreigner can come to my country and serve the wretched in my country, why shouldn't I be doing that? When Jyotirao Phule started doing what Cynthia Farrar was doing, people said that you have become Christian.
The school started by Bible people, by missionaries in India, in Kerala, is known as Pallikudam. Pallikudam is next to the Palli, next to the church. APJ Abdul Kalam, he said there in the Pallikudams of Kerala, in those schools of Kerala, run by Christian missionaries, Bible people, there is unity of mind. There is no difference between Nair or Brahmin or Hindu or Muslim. There is no caste difference, no religious difference. There is unity of mind.
The period between 1800 and 1914 represents an era of great missionary expansion. The intensity of evangelization was such that the period was called as the Great Century of Missions. And the story of these healing hands is one that must be heard.
The monastic movement happened all over Europe, where there was a practice of teaching and preaching of the gospel. There was also the compulsion for them to look after the sick. And when they began to look after the sick, they had to create an antechamber, and they called that the hospice. And so people would be admitted to the hospice. And this hospice, after a while, became unmanageable. And so they became autonomous. They began to be called hospitals. And so this whole ecosystem was all developed and ready by the 11th century AD in Europe. And this whole ecosystem came to India with the advent of the missionaries. It was really the gospel which brought in the culture of care and the whole ecosystem of modern medicine that we now have. It did not exist in India, it did not exist in China, it did not exist in the Egyptian civilization, nor did it exist in the Babylonian civilization or in the Assyrian civilization, nor in Europe before the Christian era. The situation in India was such that women could not be even admitted in a hospital because admission meant that they had to stay overnight in the hospital, and that was not allowed. When they were pregnant, they had to be looked after by dais, and the dais were very illiterate. Some of the practices of the dais were very injurious. They would cut the cord and they would put cow dung on the cord. And that was the reason why neonatal tetanus was extremely rampant in the country.
So what she decided was that she will do an incentive system for the dais or the midwives, call them to her hospital here, the base hospital. We were called by the time Dai Hata. And she would give incentives, the Anna Paisa with a hole inside. So she would give them some money and they would come and attend her educative classes. And when they went back to their villages, she would give them a sterilization kit. That means when they take deliveries, they could use disinfectant solution. They would give her a sterile blade so that the umbilical cord of the baby can be cut with a sterile blade and not unsterile blade. So that itself brought down a lot of deaths in the babies.
One of the reasons why Christianity fueled the development of medical mission around the world is because of its foundation. In the Gospels, there is the command to love your neighbor. to look after the sick, Jesus spent more time healing people of the illnesses. And so the theory and the practice that was founded by Christ fueled the development of medical mission. During the epidemics, there was a superstition among the Indians that the epidemics happened when the gods were angry. And so they did not try to heal people with smallpox. They would rather leave them alone and run away. These sufferers from smallpox, from measles, and from plague were just left to themselves to die. And in this environment came the Christian missionaries, and they began to do whatever they knew at that time they could do. They did not have the antibiotics that we have today. They tried to segregate them in camps and feed them and look after them. And a lot of the Christian missionaries actually lost their lives in the epidemic. There are examples of Christian missionaries who became lepromatous and who died looking after leprosy patients.
The other thing that the missionaries saw was people who were unhealthy, who were with cholera, with many infectious diseases, typhoid, malaria. And so many of them went back and trained in medicine or nursing and came back to India. So at independence, there were over 1,000 mission hospitals. 25% of all the health was taken care of by mission hospitals. There are only 2% of Christians in India, but 12% of doctors are Christian. There are only 2% of Christians in India, but today 70% of nurses are Christian.
It was that William Carey saw the burning of a leprosy patient just outside Calcutta city. And he acted immediately, and he started what they afterwards called the leprosoriums. Mahatma Gandhi himself was so impressed by the work of Christian missionaries in the field of leprosy that he said, look at the Christian missionaries, how they have served the leprosy patients. Should we not also emulate them?
A single woman in those days to come to a strange country, strange people, strange language, she persevered. That is what we should learn from her. In her own handwriting, Dame Edith Brown's handwriting, there is this famous thing which says, the master said, come follow. That was all.
In 1794, William Carey was riding in Malda when he noticed a basket hung in a tree with an infant exposed. Only his skull remained, and the whole body was devoured by white ants. This horrendous act of child sacrifice had been committed with religious fervor by her own mother. By passing laws declaring infanticide as murder and the abolishing of the sati custom in Calcutta, missionaries defended the helpless. But they just didn't work on the surface level to eradicate evil. They knew that for a society to change, the hearts of men need to be turned.
See, we didn't have textbooks at all. We had only palm leaves. Then 1800s, the greatest revolution in printing took place with the establishment of the Sarambur Mission Press by the Sarambur missionaries. All over India, printing missionaries started revolutionize the whole reading culture of India.
Before the missionaries came, women were suppressed. They were not given education. Even the high caste women were not educated. Let alone the low caste women were anyway, the men and women were uneducated. So when the education came in, particularly, as I was saying, that the London School of Economics did a mega study and found there's a direct correlation between Protestant missionary education of women and democracy. Now, what does democracy produce? On the one hand, democracy produces a lot of freedom. So today, women can do many things that they could never do before.
Number two, democratization. Anybody could read. upper caste or lower caste to read, and there was the opening of their mind. So Bible missionaries did not colonize their mind, they liberated the mind.
So when our founder Dame Edith Brown came and started a women's education medical college, that created a ripple effect to, send their daughters, sisters, wives for work and for education. So that is one big change which happened.
When you talk about YMCA's contribution to India, it's amazing. They started getting into sports to the young people. They started something known as the playground culture of this country. A Shudra, a Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, they were never allowed to mix together. But YMCA opened all over India playgrounds, and all these boys and girls could come and study. The first Olympic team in 1922 was trained by Bombay YMCA. They started the first sports institute in Saidapet in Tamil Nadu. Before anybody thought of the freedom of India, the first mock parliament was conducted by Bombay YMCA. First banking system was given by William Carey, Sarambuk Mission. First science laboratory was established by William Carey. The first astronomical institute was established by William Carey. The first horticulture institute was established by William Carey in 1822. Just like the way William Carey and others came and developed our major languages of India, today minority languages in the Adivasi areas are developed by Bible missionaries. Is it not exciting? So Christians continue to develop this nation. We in India have been praying. Asatoma Sadgamaya, Tamasoma Jodurgamaya, Pratyome Amrudangamaya. Lead me from untruth to truth, from darkness to light, from death to life. Where is the answer? You want truth? Come. You want life? Come. You want light? Come. That's all we are saying.
We may not identify ourselves as a Christian country or a Christian society, but the fact is that some of our underlying beliefs are still very, very theologically biblical and Christian. That's something I think we need to learn and we need to discuss.
Once when a riot broke out, she was warned by the local community that please leave the place, we are planning to kill you. She said, no, I have my children studying here, the students. So what she did, quick thinking, she took all the students and went to the railway station, Ludhiana railway station, which is just 1.5 kilometers from here. And she asked the railway police to give her protection. And in the parked train wagons, she conducted classes. She just didn't stop the classes. She went on with it till the riots were settled. I think for almost a week or two, they had continuous classes in the trains. So our now principal says that, the present principal says, we must be the only medical college in the whole world who conducted classes in a train.
The missionaries who were from the lower classes, they could identify with the lower classes here. See, if any empire has to sustain itself, it has to make peace with the elites. What happens to the downtrodden? What happens to the marginalized people? It was the missionaries who worked for them. To work for the poorest of the poor, the wretched of the earth, the outcast and the rejected means that you are a Christian. That's what the Christian missionaries have done for this country.
Now, when you communicate the gospel, the heart of God is compassionate. So when you see people who are not educated, you bring education. People who are socially deprived, people who are unhealthy, you bring health to them. So the holistic gospel is primarily to reach people with the love of Christ.
Real Christianity is about servanthood. It's about being servants of a nation.
We broke the chains of enslavement in this country. That's what we did.
And I hope that we continue to bring that social revolution that started with people like Cynthia Farrar, that started with people like William Carey, that started with people like John Newton here in Punjab.
Because Jesus Christ said, go and love everybody. They came to love, to serve, to give. made this nation a great nation, that India will be filled with the knowledge of the glory of Christ as waters cover the sea.
Christianity has a beautiful legacy in India. We have been here for 1,000 generations. This voyage of missionaries coming from the West has now been transformed into an internal reflection for Indian Christians to go to the poor and needy. We must continue to serve, teach, love, and preach the gospel truth to our fellow countrymen.
Re